All right, hello everyone, and thanks for joining us today. Before we start, I have a few reminders while folks are still joining. So we certainly like to keep the webinars conversational. Definitely welcome your questions throughout. You can send questions to the panel through the Q&A button, which is on your Zoom control panel. We will try to answer as many as we can live, but if we don't get to your question, then we'll be sure to follow up with you afterwards. And then you can follow today's conversation on Twitter. We'll be live tweeting throughout the webinar at Rio_SEO and using hashtag Rio webinar as well. And then finally, we'll send a link to the webinar recording within the next 24 hours. So look out for a follow-up email from our marketing team. So hopes of 2022 bringing a sense of normalcy are slowly dwindling as the coronavirus continues. Vaccinations, new variants, ongoing travel restrictions, health regulations around the globe are all keeping local marketers on their toes as we plan for the year ahead. Consumer needs and behaviors are evolving and changing, and the sheer volume of content and information all of this is creating has resulted in local markets becoming much more competitive than before. So how can you keep your business locations positioned at the front of the pack in such uncertain times and conditions? And that's what we're here for to discuss today. So my name is Nigel Atkinson. I am an account director at Rio SEO. I'll be moderating today's discussion. And today I'm joined by a great panel of digital marketing professionals who will help me explore the future of local search, as well as predictions for 2022. And their insights will hopefully help guide your 2022 local marketing strategy and identify opportunities to kickstart the new year. So without further ado, joining me today are Andrew Shotland, CEO and founder of Local SEO Guide, Danny Owens, local SEO consultant with Bigzilla, and then Chad Klingensmith, senior SEO strategist at Rio SEO. And let's kick off with Andrew. Would you like to just add some color about yourself and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks. Good morning, everyone. So I'm Andrew Shotland, CEO of Local SEO Guide. We're a full-service SEO agency. We specialize in multi-location brands, local marketplaces, and B2B SaaS. And we've been doing local for, it's like 16 years or something. And it's just as crazy as it was when we first started.
Great, thanks, Andrew. Danny, you're up next.
Hey, Danny Owens. I'm a local SEO consultant. I've been in digital marketing since 2011. I primarily service small mom and pop shops or multi-location businesses. And lately I've been getting more into SEO training and mentorship.
And last but not least, Chad.
Thank you, Nigel. My name is Chad Klingensmith. I am the senior SEO strategist at Rio. I've been involved with SEO since 2005, and I've really focused more exclusively on local since 2011. So it's been a fun ride. And as Andrew said, it's definitely as crazy as now as it was back then.
Excellent. Thanks, Chad. So before we get started, we want to do a quick poll. We have the poll up on your screens. So you can choose which one of these you want to discuss, or rather, which of our predictions we'll discuss further today, and the one that you think is most likely to take place in 2022. So there's 6 answers. Go through them real fast. Providing exceptional customer service, quality content, and long-tail keywords. Google business profiles will move to a paid feature. More zero-click searches. Online reputation management will grow in importance. And then local search will continue to grow transactional in nature. If you have anything other, please share that in the chat as to what that specific update is. I'm gonna give you guys a minute or so to go ahead and vote in that poll. All right, starting to get some answers in. Looking good. Looks like local search will continue to grow transactional in nature. That's an interesting one. That's 30% of everybody thinks that's going to happen. providing exceptional customer service. Yeah, that's not too much of a surprise. And then online reputation management will grow in importance. Is a very close second. More zero-click searches is another interesting one as well, as people get more votes in. Give you guys another few seconds to finish that up. All right, well, I think it's pretty good. I think so. Local search will continue to grow. Transactional in nature seems to have won out with the votes we have. So that's an interesting one. And we can certainly bear that in mind as we go through some of the questions that we have on the call today. So let's kick off this discussion. Let's start with user experience predictions, something that Google has been focusing on for many years. So Chad, we'll start with you. How can brands improve their user experience in 2022? What are the short-term fixes to implement right away? And what are longer-term projects to focus on to improve UX?
Yeah, thanks, Nigel. Yeah, that's a very good question. And whenever I am asked this from a client or a prospect or a friend, I usually say, let's start out simple. Okay, let's look at the simple mistakes, the SEO fixes, the issues we usually come across from SEO 101 perspective, because this not only impacts SEO signals, but also impacts the user experience as well. For example, if you have under-optimized title tags that are just the brand name, or maybe they're too long, or maybe they're just not relevantly optimized for the keywords you're going after, Google may decide to show a different search result for the title tag than the content you have in that title tag now. That's a change that happened a few months ago. So when you optimize your landing pages, you're not only optimizing it for search engines, you're also optimizing it for the user to better communicate about what you offer. So the best way to start out is, let's just do a full simple audit. Let's look at the H1 tags, the title tags, my description tags. Let's take a look at the categories you're using for Google My Business profiles. Just keep it simple. This is usually a very quick fix that can be done to really improve the user experience and the SEO signals. And it may give you more of a boost than you may even realize. Some of the SEO 101 tactics that worked 15 years ago are still important today, which is amazing, especially in the digital industry, that these fundamentals never change. Start simple. Now, for longer term projects, a lot is happening as usual in the whole search arena. My advice is, let's pay more attention to content development. And content could be, well, maybe text, images, media, video, etc. I usually say, let's start out with communicating with simple written text. This takes more legwork. It's a bit more, takes some effort professionally to get this written out. With that said, that's going to do amazing things for user experience, because it's better communicating what people are looking for, what your brand offers as a service and products. It's better communication to Google. We're going to talk about this more as the webinar goes on, but make sure that you're giving a rich experience for your customers and users. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Chad. So next, falling in line with the theme of focusing on the end consumer, customer service is another hot topic right now. As we move into a world of cookieless tracking, it's becoming even more imperative to keep customers first. It's becoming more challenging to get in front of new customers. Therefore, having repeat customers should really be a top focus. Danny, how should businesses' marketing tactics shift in 2022 to put the customer first?
Well, first off, everybody should be doing this, right? But I do think at each year that progresses, businesses are getting more focused on customer service. It's very important for users to have a wonderful experience with your business. And when it comes to repeat customers, something that pops into mind is email. That's a big one to help, communicate with the customers and reach out to people who have already purchased from you. But also, a good way, as we've already discussed, is the user experience. Making sure from start to finish, when somebody lands on your site and is going through checkout experience or contacting you, that they're actually enjoying that experience.
Perfect. Thank you, Danny. producing quality content continues to be rewarded in search. In fact, the major Google search algorithm updates of June and July 2021 have made us more aware than ever of the importance of quality information. Andrew, how can a business improve their content efforts for 2022? And where should they focus on creating, updating their content first?
So actually, can I address the user experience thing for a second? Because I actually have some salient data on that.
Yeah. Okay.
So Google launched this Core Web Vitals update earlier this year. They made a big noise about it, and frankly, what we saw across every one of the sites we have access to data, which is a lot, is big deal. Didn't change anything. Those who had really strong Core Web Vital scores, and these are Core Web Vitals is basically a proxy for performance, how the website loads to a user, how fast, how slow, and what happens when it loads. And we saw nothing. Bad Core Web Vital scores, no downturn. Good Core Web Vital scores, no upturn. And so everyone's kind of cautious about recommending that you prioritize this stuff. As of the last 3 weeks, we're starting to see correlation, underscore correlation. Sites that have poor Core Web Vitals metrics seem to be getting hit. Now it's correlating with a lot of Google updates. There were several Google updates that happened over the last 3 weeks. Google does a lot of updates in November for the holidays traditionally. So it's very hard to say, hey, yeah, it was Core Web Vitals. But just this morning, we were looking at a pretty big site that got basically what's called cumulative layout shift. Their cumulative layout shift metric went way up, meaning it slowed down. There were a lot more of this layout shift stuff happening. And Googlebot stopped crawling as much. The Googlebot response time went way up, and their traffic surprise is down about 10%. So that may be something you want to focus on, even if it's not that what caused the Google downturn. SEO is kind of is like you have to like check stuff off and be like, well, maybe this, maybe that, and so you should basically be looking at these metrics and making sure that they're not potentially hurting your performance. As far as your question you actually asked, what's the content plan for 2022? Is that basically what you asked, or how important is content?
Yes. Yeah.
So as Chad and I both said earlier, like SEO today is not so dissimilar from SEO 10 years ago. Content is the key to everything. Get your technical stuff out of the way. Make sure that that's all locked down. If you're not a really strong brand that gets a lot of links from the other sites in the web, you may need a plan to kind of get links into your site. But ultimately, any SEO program is going to revolve around content creation. And so I can't say like that's changed really much at all in 2022 or 2021, other than you have to constantly be evaluating what is Google rewarding for the topics that you want to target. And that changes over time. So maybe something you ranked for 3 years ago, you don't rank for anymore. That's probably a signal that your content needs to be updated because it's probably out of date, not as good as someone else's, a competitor's content. So I would say, yeah, you should be, if you're planning your 2022 budget for SEO, content should be a big part of it.
Excellent. Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate the additional input on the Core Web Vitals piece. Yeah, it's been pretty important for a lot of our clients recently. All right, moving on. In 2022, we expect Google MUM and AI in general to be more prevalent and become even more sophisticated. MUM will be able to read text on web pages and comprehend the meaning, understand complex topics at an intelligent level, use audio files and video as supplemental material to help with comprehension, and translate those findings into multi-layered content that addresses complicated questions all at the same time. Chad, how can businesses prepare for the advancement of AI technology and be found for complex queries?
Thanks, Nigel. Yes, the MUM update is going to be about 1,000 times more powerful than the previous BERT update. This is really creating the Skynet about 2022 for Google when it comes to artificial intelligence. But with that said, it really comes down to really getting into the head of the user intent. For example, if I do a search for custom snowboards in Colorado, Google will probably give me a combination of e-commerce stores, information articles about snowboarding and skiing, weather conditions and ski resorts. But it's taking a look at the query I'm doing and seeing what is this related to and to understand the behavior. So from a brand marketer's point of view, it's even more important, as what Andrew just brought up earlier, to really focus on that well-developed content that speaks to the user. Obviously, the first step would be written content, would be text, but it's worth the effort to build out the topical information about what your service offers to your customers. And for example, if I run a company that does moving vans, and I want to, really improve my organic search, I might decide to, on my local landing pages, to put more information about the location, what I'm next to, what we offer. I might take screenshots and take images of the storefront images of the actual trucks that we were renting out to people. I might have an article about how much space these trucks offer, how much gas mileage they get, what's the easiest way to return them, moving tips so you don't hurt your back. It's worth it to put in extra effort because Google's not only saying, hey, this is something you're searching for, here's the direct results, that's great, but they're looking at not only result A, but they're looking at result B and C. B and C might be images related about what you're searching about, or it might be other things such as zero-click searches of giving an answer to your question, which we'll discuss later. But it's worth it to look at that content. And I always say start with the text first, but also you need to start incorporating more images to give a more holistic experience to the user. And MUM is going to be looking at that. It's going to be looking at relationships. It's going to be looking at relevancy. It's going to be looking at topical focuses. So make sure that the content is king. Just focus on it.
Excellent. Thanks, Chad. So I'm going to take a step back real quick because we do have a question that's related to content that came in on Q&A, and seeing as that's what we've been talking about, let's address that real quick. This is open to anybody. What tools do you recommend for content analysis as it relates to local SEO?
I could probably address some of that. There's a billion SEO tools out there that will do everything for you and do nothing for you. There's a couple of good ones that we like. One of the most important ways to analyze what your content strategy should be for a particular keyword or topic is to look at what URLs are ranking for that topic at scale. So you want to look at not just the first 2 or 3, you want to look at the top 50. What is it they all have in common? And what is it that we can extract from that from that content and say, we can use that. So there's a great tool called ClearScope that we use. There's several tools like this out there. There's another one called Demand Jump. Content Harmony is another one. These all look at scale, content, it's content relevance, let's put it that way. And so it's a really great way to kind of put your content into this system and say, it's not mentioning these topics, which are showing up on 50 other pages that rank for it. So that's one I would recommend if you're developing content for your sites, is you want a tool like that to help you with. And then there's a billion of the standard keyword tools that are all good for getting at least a bare minimum of data about what is ranking for what. So there's semrush.com, keywordtool.io, another good one. Ahrefs has its own keyword database. There's a million of them.
Excellent. Thank you for jumping in on that one.
I agree with Andrew. Just saying, one other tool that's really helpful is called Phrase, FRASE.io. That's an excellent one to look at. But when you're developing this content, make sure that you are writing it naturally, as if someone's going to read it. And I'm still surprised that some of our people are like, well, should we be concerned about keyword density of the target phrase we're going after? The Google algorithm has gotten so smart, it can understand the synonyms, how topics are related. So you could be talking about oranges, but the article can be about orange juice, and Google is going to reward that article if it's well written for search query orange juice. Make sure it's written for the user first versus being densely optimized for lots of keywords. Don't have a mechanical approach to that. That's just my advice. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Chad. Okay, moving on. With the recent announcement name change from Google My Business to Google Business Profile, we're starting to see Google shift their focus to larger businesses. Google stated the existing Google My Business web experience will transition to primarily support larger businesses with multiple locations and will be renamed Business Profile Manager. Andrew, how will this announcement impact both small and large businesses in the future? And do you think that Google Business Profiles will move to a paid or premium offering for enterprise brands?
I don't see how it affects anybody. Like, it's, at least right now, it's just a name change. Most SMBs probably don't use Google My Business. So maybe, what we hope is that this is good news for the multi-location brands that we work with, that they'll give more functionality to Google My Business, or whatever it's called now. Because right now it's pretty limited. If you want to do anything really serious, you need to use the API. As far as will it be paid, I think it should be paid. There should be some paid features to it, so you can actually get service. For those of you who've had like scale problems with Google My Business, just trying to get those problems solved, working with support is just painful. So if every one of our clients would gladly pay Google some money just to get someone to return a call and fix these ridiculous problems that happen in that system.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. With customers' expectations steadily rising and technology adapting to this growing need to be able to reach a business quickly, Danny, what tools do you recommend for businesses to better meet these demands?
Well, consumers do expect to be able to contact businesses easily and quickly. And if you want to provide exceptional customer service, there are many great communication methods out there. Some great ways that you can interact directly with customers are by using Google My Business messaging feature. Also making sure to reply to all reviews that you're receiving. So for example, a tool like GatherUp, you can go in and reply to, positive or negative reviews. You will get questions on your Google My Business listing, so you can reply to those under the Q&A setting. But other even better ways are texting or chat features. There's a tool called Leadferno that I've been kind of interested in lately, and I've seen a few sites using, which can definitely help you with chat and text messaging from your website. So those are some recommendations I have.
Excellent. Thanks, Danny. Moving on, zero-click searches have been on the rise since 2019 and will likely continue to trend upward in the future. Andrew, how can businesses optimize their online presence knowing that customers may not even make it to their website?
Well, so you've got this two challenges, really more than two, but you want to get clicks to your website, but then you also want to get visibility inside all of these zero-click search results and work inside of Google systems. So as an example, we work with Rotten Tomatoes, the movie review site, right? And so they want to show up when a movie knowledge panel shows up that has ratings and reviews on it. And it's actually really straightforward how to do that. You have to use what's called structured data on your website, which says, hey, we've got reviews. And so what you should be looking at, depending on whatever kind of business you are, is what are the quote unquote zero-click elements that Google is showing on the search results you care about? And is there a way to get my business more visible in it using things like structured data? Or maybe looking at the sources that Google is using to populate these features. And so maybe there's a website like Crunchbase, let's say, that is where your company should be listed because Google's sucking data from Crunchbase and showing it in these zero-click elements. So it requires a bit of detective work, looking at the different search results to see what Google is showing for them, and then coming up with a strategy of how do I get my business inside those things. So it's not just about traffic to my website.
Excellent. Thanks, Andrew. Despite the growing trend of zero-click results, a business's website still matters and serves as an opportunity to build trust and share more detailed information. Chad, what on-page optimization opportunities can brands leverage going into 2022?
Thanks, Nigel. As I mentioned earlier, it's always a good idea to revisit your existing optimization and what you have put in place right now. Do a basic SEO audit, use Screaming Frog, look for the low-hanging fruit first, get that taken care of, don't ignore that. You'll be surprised that how often simple things are overlooked. Right? Say that like a broken record, but it's very important not to have duplicate title tags, duplicate meta description tags, etc. That can harm you more than you realize. But when it comes to algorithm updates and the rise of zero-click searches, this ties back into custom long-form content. There's a lot of things that you can do to improve zero-click results by having question and answers. Like someone might ask a question like, what time does this moving van company open near me? And we say, well, it opens at 8 o'clock, and stays open until 6, Monday through Friday. It's possible for you to get a zero-click search result and answer box if you're able to structure that content appropriately. So don't ignore that. That content goes a long way. And also, as Andrew has mentioned earlier, Core Web Vitals is something that people are still looking at. That's still of utter abhorrence. There was a lot of hype about it, where I wasn't sure if it was that big of an impact or not. It is definitely, as Google says, a positive search engine signal. That takes some legwork with your development team. You really need to speed up your site. That you need to compress files, you need to compress images. That's a little bit easier said than done. With that said, do what you can there, because if things are just too slow, it's going to be harming the user experience, and that's something Google's will look into more. So start easy and work your way up. Start easy with the technical stuff, with simple, the title tags, etc. Then move up to the next step, which would be written text, which would be content. That takes some professional work, professional writing, and also, last but not least, you need some development updates. Understand that your core web vitals are very important to really speed up those scores. Thanks.
Thank you, Chad. A brand's online reputation can highly influence a consumer's decision to use their products or services. Additionally, reviews continue to be a heavily weighted factor when determining your search ranking. We've seen Google prioritize highlighting businesses who prioritize their online reputation by adding newer features such as tags and surfacing 3 random reviews in the knowledge panel. Danny, what tips do you have for businesses managing reviews at scale in 2022?
Well, I'll start with collecting reviews. That's definitely something that's important to do, is some reputation management. So if you want to do smaller scale that's affordable, you can do that simply by emailing customers and, asking how their experience was and if they'd like to leave a review. You also will get alerts via email that a customer has left a review that you can reply to. But obviously, if we're talking about big scale, excuse me, there are multiple reputation management softwares out there. Like I mentioned, GatherUp earlier is one that I like personally, where it will collect all that data from all these multiple locations. And you have one dashboard where you can check to reply to messages and also solicit reviews via the platform as well. You do want to be cautious of review velocity. You don't want to do something that might trigger Google's attention on your listing. So let's say you get 100 reviews a month. Naturally, you don't want to get 1,000 reviews in one day. That might be something to cause the issue. Also, just as I touched on earlier, it is a best practice to me to reply to the positive reviews and the negative reviews. There was a study from 2018, I can't recall who did it, but I remember their study showed some results that there was a benefit to replying to both. I personally think when I'm looking at, Google My Business listings and I see that somebody's replied to both, I'm thinking this business cares about customer service, is very active on that front. So those are my tips for managing reviews at scale.
Excellent. Thank you, Danny. So we do have a couple of questions that have come in on questions and answers. I'm going to go to those first before we get to any final predictions. This first one is open to anyone to answer. For large brands such as Marriott, how important is having unique content, i.e. things to do, places to visit, on foundational local pages, including name, address, and phone number, in order to improve rankings?
Oh, I think they're missing a big opportunity if they're not, is the short answer. We've actually worked with similar type sites, and just sometimes, especially when you have a really strong brand, you can almost add the crappiest content with impunity, and you can do well. So I would be running a lot of tests on your location pages to see what really resonates with Google.
Thanks, Andrew.
And I know that's going to be a lot of work because there's probably going to be maybe thousands of different local landing pages that need to be addressed. I would at least start off with a template of what you would want to have on your landing page, something that would be generic for many landing pages, but also in that template, you can start out optimizing it for be localized, including city names, etc. Now, that's a first start. That's just a quick fix. Google doesn't really penalize duplicate content. That's a great subject. I asked them about this years ago in a forum. They know that if a major brand has hundreds, if not thousands, of landing pages with similar content across the board, it's going to be an extra challenge to have custom content for every single landing page. With that said, you want at least 30% of it to be dynamically written to what's going on for the location. And then I would take things a step further, take a look at the locations that are not ranking very well, and start there with having fully custom content, talking about the location, talking the details about the services and products are available, and make sure it's completely unique. So, but with that said, having no content or thin content or just 2 sentences does not look that great for the user, and also Google doesn't really isn't going to reward you too much. It's sparse or nothing. So,
okay, thank you, Chad. One other one for anyone that wants to jump in. This is kind of an interesting one. Is there a clear-cut rule for URL deployments of local pages? For example, subdomain versus subdirectory.
Yeah, there's a clear-cut rule for subdomain versus subdirectory. Do subdirectory if you want to future-proof your SEO program against people complaining that you're doing it wrong by doing a subdomain. And that's the reason to do it.
Good answer.
and that's debatable. And I've seen a lot of articles come across saying what's more, subfolder might be superior to subdomain, but what comes down to what's more important is what the structure of the site is, what the domain authority is, and make sure that you are crossing all your T's and dotting all your I's. That's what Google doesn't care about.
Thanks, Chad. So while you're answering that one, another one came in. What's the best way to ask for GMB reviews without soliciting? That's an interesting one. Any ideas? I know a lot of retail organizations will put or ask for a review on things like receipts and things like that. It's still soliciting, but less in your face.
Yeah, God, when I go to the dentist, I get a text from them every time. It's just like, hey, did you enjoy your thing? Please review us on Google. Doesn't seem that it's easy to ignore and easy to do if you want to do it. Yeah,
I think the obvious ways that are sort of more direct soliciting might be sending a huge bulk email out, which is probably not a good idea. I mean, I know companies have done that in the past, but I think certainly receipts and things like that, and what you said, Andrew, are a little bit of a better way to do that. Cool. Well, that's all the questions on Q&A. I'm going to open up this final question to anyone on the panel. Does anyone have any final predictions to share for 2022 that we haven't covered today?
We're kind of big on this idea that we're working on. It's called content usefulness. It's kind of what we've talked about a little bit here. But essentially, I'll give you the kind of example that kind of turned the light bulb on in our heads. Is we were working with an assisted living facility aggregator. And so they lost a lot of rankings during COVID. And what we noticed was all the competitors who grew in rankings all had a direct phone number to an assisted living facility on their website. These guys had a sales number. And so what we hypothesized was that users wanted a direct line to the assisted living facility because they were calling them to try to figure out if their relatives were okay during COVID. They didn't want a sales number, so they were bouncing off of this site and going to the next one in Google. And so our recommendation was you need to change that sales number to a direct number, and it worked. And so I think figuring out those kinds of scale content usefulness cases for the topics you're trying to target is kind of the future of not just local SEO, but SEO. And so that's my little prediction for 2022.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Andrew. So while you were talking, we've had some more questions. So here we go. ADA compliance being a factor for Google ranking in 2022.
Could you repeat that one more time, Nigel?
Yeah, the question is ADA compliance being a factor for Google ranking in 2022? I haven't heard that it is, but I'll open it up to the panel.
Maybe for queries that require that or something, but I think it's a factor in avoiding frivolous lawsuits from attorneys that are chasing websites and threatening to sue them for not being compliant.
Right.
So that's where we see, honestly, that's where we see the biggest questions come, is when people get harassed by attorneys.
Yeah, and Rio's been doing quite a lot of work to make a lot of their hosted sites ADA compliant. But as far as I'm aware, there isn't really a law as such that compels companies yet to make them ADA compliant.
The good news is that doing a lot of that stuff actually is good for SEO, like tagging images and stuff for screen readers.
Yes.
Yeah. Agreed. All right, moving on. Recommendations on how to help brands with SAB locations compete against brick and mortar on GMB.
Oh, that's a fun one. So there are a ton of different strategies that you can employ to try to overcome the challenge of not having a physical location in a market. Ultimately, it'll come down to content and links. So you should have a pretty strong content and link strategy. You're going to want to get reviews that mention you in the market that you want to rank. So, hey, this is the best plumber in this city, kind of thing. We've seen tactics work where you have local reviews flow into your location page for that market. So you need a location page for the market you want to target, even if you're, like we service this location. That tends to work. I have no experience with this, but I just got contacted by a company that does images for photography for multi-location businesses. And they claim that in their tests, by adding more photos to the GMB landing page, it's really accelerated their rankings in SAB markets. So another thing to try.
Excellent.
I'll mention one more thing just because it's fun. If you can afford to actually get a physical location in the markets, that's the best strategy, because now you can have, and that doesn't mean you need a storefront. It means you can just rent an office somewhere that's super cheap, and try it that way. There's some gray areas in the Google My Business guidelines, but if you're smart, you can overcome them.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrew. So earlier we talked about structured data being important. Are there any ways you would recommend optimizing sites to appear for schema markups?
So you want to take a look at some examples of sites that are performing well for zero-click searches, and take a look at the Google structured data testing tool and see what they're using, see what they're marking up, see what attributes that they're applying schema to. Schema is always constantly improving and expanding. It helps the Googlebot better understand what your site offers. So I'll give you an example. You got a messy garage full of boxes, okay, and you're familiar with your garage, and you walk in there, you know where the Christmas decorations are, you know where the pool supplies are for the summertime, etc. You don't need to, you're familiar with your own garage. But if you ask Google to walk in your garage, would they be able to find that stuff? Maybe if there's some looking around. schema is putting labels on what you have in your garage. Okay, this is where the Christmas supplies are at. This is where my hot tub supplies and pool supplies are at, etc. It makes the Google's bot job easier. So see what sites are performing well. Use the Google Rich Snippets testing tool, and they still have the structured data testing tool as well. And take a look at their schema code and what they're marking up and what they're using. That's going to make the Google bot's job easier. That's going to improve your chances of getting more rich results, which would be anything that's not a standard search result, and also maybe help you get a zero-click search for some, for questions and answers. Thanks.
Thank you, Chad. Okay, so I've got one more. What are the top API uses with Google Business Profile? I like the fact that this question is using the new name instead of Google My Business. It's going to take me a while to get used to calling it Google Business Profile. But can anybody address what the top API uses are with Google Business Profile or GMB?
We've been, I believe they just launched the capability to do Google My Business posts at scale across multi-locations. And that's one of the best proactive uses of the API you can use. So as you guys may know, if you do a Google My Business post against a location, it typically shows up when someone does a brand query, and it's a very inexpensive, quick thing to do. And you can use it to convert people already familiar with your brand into offers. And so we found it to be a very great ROI. And so if you can get your developers to jack into the API to use that, we do it. And of course, you can use the API to suck all the data out of GMB. So if you have multiple locations, you want to aggregate all the insights data, even though insights data is generally crap, at least it's something. That's another good way to use the API.
All righty, thanks, Andrew. All right, I think that actually wraps it up for today. We've got a lot of ground. We hope you found today's webinar informative, actionable. If there are any questions we didn't get to, we'll make sure to follow up afterwards. We'd also be happy to answer any questions you didn't have a chance to ask, and you can always shoot us an email to marketing@rioseo.com. Huge thank you for everyone joining today's discussion, and a special thank you to our awesome panelists, Andrew, Chad, and Danny, for taking the time to be with us today. Could you quickly tell everyone how they can best reach you?
Sure, you guys can reach me. I'm on Twitter way too much at local SEO guide. You can email me at andrew@localseoguide.com. And you can go check out our website, localseoguide.com. And also, while I've got you, I'll pimp out, we're actually doing our own first webinar or meetup next week, the 14th, and we're talking about core web vitals on store locator pages. We did an audit of some of the top brands. And so if you're interested in that, go check it out. Should be on our website or on my Twitter feed. So thanks.
Thank you, Andrew.
Be the best place to find me. Obviously, I don't have the easiest last name to remember, but learn it, you don't forget it. So find me on Chad Klainsmith on LinkedIn. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me.
Thanks, Chad.
Yeah. And I'm on Twitter, but my Twitter handle is a pain to spell out to people. So if you just go to pigzilla.co, that's how you could contact me.
All righty. Well, thank you very much. We will be sending out a recording of today's webinar. Thanks again. It was my pleasure to moderate today's discussion. Now, we host these types of local search discussions every month, and we definitely hope to see everyone again pretty soon. Thanks again, and happy holidays.
Thank you.
Thanks.